I'm just going to do a short video on how to start a car when the starter is going bad. So I have my Hyundai Santa Fe here, 2003, and the starter is starting to not make connection. So what happens is you have to tap on the starter. And so this is where my starter is. It's up underneath this sheeting. So it's actually, if you can see this bulb right here, that's actually where the clutch comes in, the gear attaches to the flywheel in the engine, and then turns over the engine with that small little motor. So what you do is you take a hammer and you just lightly tap like that, and what that does is that kind of slightly jiggles the electrical components inside of the starter motor and causes it to make connection when you put 12 volts to it. So you have someone turn the key while you tap on the starter, and then the engine will start. Go ahead. Alright, first, before getting started on the starter, always disconnect the battery cable. Disconnect the negative. It's usually a 10mm socket. Some cars are different, but this car, it's a 10mm. Alright, so for this particular car, there's a shroud here. So this is covering the starter. There's 2 bolts in the front and there's 1 on the back, and they are 10mm, which is good because that's handy. This is what our battery was. So we get started taking them out. Alright, 10mm socket on my drill. It's one of the best tools I ever bought. Was this extension bar for my drill with a nut on it. Just get that out of the way. Stupid thing. It's just to protect the back of this motor from the heat from the exhaust pipe. Alright, so there should be 2 bolts, one here and one up back up in here. Probably 14mm, I'm assuming. Typically when I'm working on my cars, I use my deep socket set, but back in these tight corners, it is really just a pain to use anything other than standard sockets. Alright, so typically they go the same direction. Alright, there's one. Let's get this other one out. It's a short little, this side's actually a nut as opposed to a bolt. So this side has the nut on it, and the other side has the bolt. The reason why you disconnect the battery for this is because since there is electricity going to it, you don't really want this thing to short out on you while you're working on it. Alright, so 13mm socket up here to get this electrical bit off. Try. Save me some time. Bingo. So this is the back of the starter here, right there, and that's the back of the solenoid. And those 2 bolts are both electrical components. I can't get this to do this without going blurry. So that's the bolt that I'm doing. The top bolt's what you want, and that'll disconnect it from the car. All right, so let's drop this thing out of here. get that off. Take this bolt the rest of the way off. And this pre-cat's still kind of hot, so gotta watch my hand here. Alright, so there's a starter. And then there's just this little clip. It's just got a little push tab on it. Just push and pull it off. So that's the flywheel. So that's where the gearing for that hole, that circle, your top of the circle you're seeing is the I can't get this up in there. Look at me further. So it's got the big microphone on it. So that's where the gearing for the starter meets the flywheel. So this little tiny motor turns over the entire flywheel for the car, and that's what starts the engine. So that's where it goes in. That plastic dangling thing here, that's the clip connector. That connects to the back of the starter. Okay, so flip this around so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this casing off, and we're going to clean the starter components in here. So the gearing looks good. There's not any heavy wear on there. The other thing you want to try is to do this, and if this moves up and down freely, then the clutch is bad in it and you need to get a new starter. Don't bother trying to fix the clutch. It's a pain in the butt. Small little Phillips. Keep all your bolts together. There's no headache at the end searching for everything. Stop pecking. Get out of here. Get out of here. And a 5/16 socket. So this goes all the way through and connects in through there. And looks like there's one more, and I'm going to actually need a real socket for that. Another long one. Always remember which orientation. Alright, so pop the housing off. So oftentimes these are the bits that need to be cleaned are in here. So they get kind of corroded and crusty and carrying on. So when you tap on the starter, that's what you're hitting. There's all that dirt in there. We'll clean all this off. This here needs to be cleaned. Let me grab a wire brush and I'll show you what we do. Alright, so see how dark and sooty that is? Now when I scrape this off, it'll go back to being a copper. That within itself should really fix this issue. Like I said, it was getting to the point where pretty much every time I go to start it, it would just act like there was just no juice going to the starter at all, which that's obviously not the problem. And whenever you have that issue, what happens is, if you see the black that's on there, that is a hindrance for the connection. So it needs to be bright copper to make the connection. So this is actually like a soot or like a wear from these metal bits here. So these are kind of spring loaded, and what they do is they make contact with this, and when the juice goes through from the battery, it goes into these, and then this can spin while still making connection with the copper. So what happens is when you get this black soot on there, it creates a dead spot. So when you go to start the car, you turn the juice, well, the juice is hindered by that black stuff, the soot, and it can't make a connection, therefore it doesn't turn the motor, which therefore does not turn your engine. So just simply doing this, most people will go and pay a mechanic several $100s just to have a starter replaced, when 9 times out of 10 this is what they just need done. So do not take your car to a mechanic, especially not to the dealer. Oh my gosh. You just take a rag, and look how much better that looks. I'll insert a little before and after here. This stuff doesn't matter because this has like an acrylic on it, so that seals it, so there shouldn't be any soot in there. And this doesn't matter because this isn't electrical, this is mechanical. And you can see in here, look at all the soot in there. See all that soot? I can just dump that stuff out. It's wicked. Look at that. So what I'll do is, I won't touch anything up in here because there's actually lubricants in there. So I don't want to mess too much with that with sprays or anything, but I am going to spray these pieces off after I kind of clean them up with the wire brush. Alright, a little bit of carb cleaner, not brake cleaner. Do not use brake cleaner on components. I'm just going to touch them up a little bit just to loosen up any soot, not spraying it into direct connections. Just spraying it right here on these pieces that are going to be hitting right against the rotor itself. You can see there's some schmutz on there. I am still going to wire brush it, but I just want to kind of get the loose stuff off real quick. Just kind of scrape it up a little bit. They don't have to be super shiny. Just when they get worn a little bit, it causes them to kind of glaze over, and then they don't make a very good connection with your rotor. And this is a pretty soft metal, so you don't want to do it too crazy, because then you'll have a different problem where they won't be making connection at all with your rotor. You just want to kind of just scuff them up a little bit so they have room to make connection. And in here, I'm just going to spritz this out a little bit. Again, I'm not going to be dousing the inside. Hold everything up, keep it upside down. Gets connected onto that rotor, and it gets all glazed over and creates a connection issue. As you can see, there's a little marble, and if that comes out, you got to make sure that it goes straight back into the center of this hole. So you want to make sure that's in there. What I do is I just drop. Oh, see, it connects. These are magnets in here. These are magnets, so you just want to make sure you drop it dead center. So now it's in there, and this goes back in. See that? That's where the marble will sit. That's got a little bit of grease on it, so you don't want to hit that. So just to see that again, kind of just snaps in. Try to get it center. There it goes. Alright, so make sure it's up the right side up. And that thing has to kind of seat into that groove that's on the side of the housing here. See that little groove there? Make sure the rubber dinghy seats in there, because that keeps moisture from getting into the starter. There, it kind of clicks in when it goes in the right spot. All right, so then we can. That kind of helps you line up your holes though too. There's a groove on the side of this, and that goes right over top there, straight down. And if everything's in where it should be, that'll sit just so, and you won't have any gaps or anything. You kind of see there's 4 holes in there, and all those holes need to line up. So just take once everything's placed down where it should be, take your bolt, put it in there at just an angle so that way it lines up the hole. Thread the bolt in, or the screw. It's almost like a bolt. Same thing with your second one, because that housing can't be touching the rotor, so this pulls the housing away from. Alright, so then we can put these screws back in here. Long bolts. And then this side has that threading on it, should be on this end. Keep your fingers away from this edge of this housing, you'll pinch your fingers. Just snug so you can get the other one in. And there you go. So now your starter's good to go. And this is an old starter. This is the second time I've done this, and it's lasted well over its expected lifetime. So let's get it back up into the car and see how well it works. All right, so go back first. Get this little tab here, snap that back on, snap the put this cable back on, and you take your bolt, thread it in place. It's just easier to do it now while you can see it, instead of once the thing's already in place. Alright. Once that's already kind of snugged on, then you can get ready to put this back in the housing. So there's a bolt that comes out first. You're going to slide that into the hole, the top hole. There, and you'll know when it's seated because it goes all the way in. This bolt goes from the other side. Just kind of put that in there and get it snug. And get the threading started. .14mm socket. And then take your nut. You kind of have to feel around for it. Your hand's going to be in the way, being able to see what you're doing. Just start to snug that on. Same type of thing, just get it right where it's against the housing, and finish up what you have to do with the bottom one first. Oil or anything getting up inside there. That's it. Now we just got to reconnect the battery terminal. I'm just going to connect this back on. Okay, let's try it out. Key in, just like that. Started. Turn it off. Do it again. Just do it a few times because the rotor is going to be in different positions, making different connections. You just want to make sure that there was no dead spots anymore. And we're good in the hood.